good day to you now. That's right, we're the S Academy. And today, feeling the vibes. I know you feel it. We're going to be looking at geometry. And we're going to be working on angles, pairs of them actually, and special relationships. Bow. And so here we are, we're looking at special relationships of angles. That's right, that's what we're going to be doing. And if we're looking at pairs of angles specifically, pairs of angles, and what kind of names or relationships that these special pairs, we're going to give 5 of those today. Pairs of angles and their relationships. The first one that we're going to talk about, that first special pair, we're going to talk about, let's start with complementary. Complementary angles. Well, the definition of complementary can go like this, given by Ryan Dunning today. You get compliments in life when you do things right. So let that word picture help us understand the complementary angles. Their measurements add to 90 degrees. And we've learned that a 90-degree angle is called a right angle. So again, you get lots of compliments when you do things right. Complementary angles. Those pairs of angles add to a right angle, to 90 degrees. The second relationship, pairs of angles that we're going to be looking at, is going to be supplementary. Well, supplementary angles, they have a special relationship too, and those pairs of angles are going to add to 180 degrees. The measurements of 2 angles that are supplementary, they're going to add to 180. Now, special words, that also is communicated and titled a 180-degree angle we call a straight angle. So here's a word picture. Supplementary and straight both begin with the letter S. That helps you. The third relationship that we're going to look at between a pair of angles, let's call it, let's see if I'm forgetting the pattern. Oh, yes, I am. And I do want to go to adjacent. Adjacent angles. Adjacent angles, well, that means next to. And these specifically, adjacent angles, they share an endpoint, or better said, vertex, which is the word that we learned last week for endpoint, that they share. And they share a side. So since that one's a little bit different, here's what that means. If you have an angle, this angle A is adjacent to B because they share the endpoint and they share this one side between the two. That's what we call adjacent pair of angles. A fourth of 5 different relationships that we're looking at for pairs of angles is going to be a linear pair. This is how we're going to call it, and this is what a linear pair means. Linear pair of angles are adjacent and form a straight line. As a matter of fact, you see line in the word linear. So that should be your word picture clues to what a linear pair of angles looks like. Here's an example of a linear pair and what that can look like. A and B are indeed a linear pair. They create that straight line. They are adjacent. They share an endpoint and they share a side, but those 2 angles put together, they create a straight line. The fifth and final relationship between pairs of angles that we're talking about today are going to be what we call vertical. Now you need to be able to recognize when you see vertical angles or when you see any of these special relationships, you need to be able to recognize if they're brothers and sisters, or their cousins, or their aunts and nieces. You need to be able to understand if they're complementary, supplementary, adjacent, linear pair, or finally a vertical. Vertical angles are formed when you intersect two lines. That creates four angles. And the vertical angles are the angles that are opposite of each other. You can think of it that way. They're the angles that are non-adjacent. Now, which of those four angles, which pair in the A, B, C, D angles, would you consider to be non-adjacent? That's right. The ones that don't share an endpoint. Now, they do share an endpoint, but they don't share a side. A and C shares this side. A and B do not share a side. So those are considered to be vertical. C and D are considered to be vertical. And the reason it's important to be able to recognize that is vertical angles have a special relationship. They are congruent. Vertical angles have the same size, same shape. So the measurement of A is exactly the same as measurement of B. The measurement of C is exactly the same as D, but not necessarily A and C, just simply because they're vertical. Okay? 5 relationships, 5 pairs of angles, complementary, supplementary, adjacent, linear pair, verticals. Get to know them, have the power to be able to know them, what they look like, and how they relate to each other in those special relationships. Ladies and gentlemen, we are the Ask Academy. This has been geometry and special pairs of angles and their relationships.
When the sky will get dark in there, to see the colors